Welcome to the Higher Education Leadership Foundation's Fall 2020 Inspire Virtual Institute. It has been a year, not just for health, but for all of us, both personally, academically, civically, mentally, spiritually, you name it. We all in these contiguous United States have had to deal with and grapple in other spaces with life as it comes to us. And we've had to evolve. We've had to reimagine things from where we once knew them to be. Well, today I'm really excited to introduce a strong panel of individuals who have done the work, have been celebrated in the space, and have excelled in the sphere of athletics, college and university athletics. We're talking about the new executive administrators, why athletic directors and coaches must reimagine their roles. Our thought facilitator is a trailblazer. We actually are in the company of two trailblazers, but our first is Jackie McWilliams, the commissioner of the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, better known as the CIAA. CIAA. And we're happy to have her as our thought facilitator. Welcome, Commissioner McWilliams. Welcome.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Our next, her thought partners, Kiki Baker Barnes, PhD type athletic director, a trailblazer as well at Dillard University, is joining us, and she is going to add to this rich discussion. Welcome, Dr. Barnes.
Thank you. Glad to be here today.
We're happy to have you. And Percy Chico Caldwell, also PhD type and executive search consultant, but has a resume of envy. He is with Greenwood Asher, but you'll get to know that he's no stranger to the higher ed space and the world of athletics. Welcome, Dr. Caldwell.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here as well.
Thank you. And last but not least, the youngin in the bunch. I know he's tired of being called the youngin in the bunch, but soon, Jason, you won't be the youngin, and you'll wish you were. Jason Cable, PhD type as well, Senior Associate Commissioner for the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Good dude, met him at Livingstone College. Just a great group of folks. I am going to get out of the way because they've got so much to share. Commish, it is all yours, my sister.
Thank you, Dr. Felton, and just want to thank the Higher Education Leadership Institute for having this panel and session. I love to see my colleagues. I feel like we got a team, and if we went out on the court today, we could win a championship right here, just with 4. But thank you all for wanting to be on this panel today. I love this topic, particularly as we continue to see the shift and change of leadership in higher education, but particularly in college athletics. And so with us being a part of this and being seen as trailblazers and leaders in higher education, but particularly in college athletics, where we are integrated into the fold of the student experience, this topic I think is extremely important so that people understand the value of what athletics has, but what the leadership in the exposure that athletics brings for our campuses at our member institutions. This has been a challenging time, as we know, with COVID, but athletics can be challenging no matter what the time is, in my opinion. And you have to have great leadership to help manage all the things that come with managing student athletes and coaches, presidents, alumni, fans, and you name it. I think what's great about the theme, or what's even the mission of this organization, that we're not alone. And so today's just a reminder, being a part of this, that even though we're working differently and independently, we are still working together for the mission of giving students an opportunity to do the things that they love to do. So we get to lead, we get to inspire, we get to lift one another, even through COVID, and the challenges that we have in front of us, we have an opportunity to talk through it together and raise the colleagues that are with us in this space. So I want to tee this dialogue up with how the role of the AD, as I've seen it, has evolved over the years, even as a student, maybe starting in high school. I can remember specifically when I saw athletic directors in the space, they were physical education professionals, and they coached. Sometimes they had dual roles. Even more so, Kiki, we can say that it was mostly men and not a whole lot of women that were in the space. And over the years, there's still not enough of us, I would say, but we are moving in numbers, and we are seeing more Black men getting in the space as well, not just at HBCUs, but across the country. We know that there's more work in the pipeline to get us there. But specifically in HBCUs, even as a college athlete, I still saw more men being athletic directors and leading the space, and women being support in the athletic space to help move the mission of college athletics. There's a small percentage still of women ADs. I think it's about 1%, and commissioners, there's only 3 Black females as commissioners, and I was one over the last 7 years. And so again, there's a lot of learning and opportunities there, but I think what's key in this space is that we prepare us, Black and brown leaders, to be in this role. And what does that really mean? And that includes coaches. Because Chico, you and I talked about how coaches used to be the AD, and they were the ones who left coaching, transitioned to athletic directors, and now the world is different on how they're looking at roles. There's not a lot of coaches that are getting in the AD roles, but I see coaches getting their PhDs, trying to transition in the role. So I want to ask you, Chico, first in this conversation, and I hope that kind of teed up where we're about to go here, because I want to have some good dialogue. And it's good to see you, Chico. I told you I have not worked with you directly, but I know all stories about you, and they're all good. And you have been a leader in the space of college athletics. You've coached, you've been at universities. I think you're a North Carolina Central grad. You've got this background that I think we all aspire to retire like you and live on a golf course and play golf every day. But you have put in the work, and now you're working at a search firm. And so I'm interested to learn from you as you are helping institutions identify new leaders on their campuses. What have you seen? What has changed since you've been in the industry on watching how coaches and athletic directors have to reimagine their roles to be considered for leadership positions?
Well, thank you, Commissioner. One of the things I want to do is make one correction. I'm not a graduate of North Carolina Central. I'm a graduate of Miles College. You see, when I came along, Blacks were not allowed into the white schools. Top athlete of the state, all state, everything. But Miles College is the one that came after me, and that's where I got my undergraduate degree, my master's degree at University of Alabama, Birmingham, my PhD at Iowa State University.
Got you.
But I know if there's any Malians on there, I will be getting a phone call here in a few minutes. I want to make sure we got it. But listen, the landscape has changed. I am one of the older guys. I came out of high school in 1965. And so what I watched is the AD's position when I was a student athlete was an old football coach, and who won more games than anyone else had been there for many years. If you look at the football coaches back in those days, basketball coaches, they were there forever. I was the AD at Winston-Salem State behind Big House Gaines, who was in there, and you watched it change. He was also the AD. And same thing with Eddie Robinson at Grambling, where I retired from. He was the AD. And now the landscape has changed to the point where, and you covered it, Jackie, where you were talking about how ADs used to be PE. As a matter of fact, my undergraduate degree was in physical education, because that's what you had to have if you're going to coach. And I wanted to major in something else, but I wanted to coach. So to me, those 4 years were not wasted, but I could have been doing some other things, but I just wanted to coach. And now the landscape has changed. And that's where my focus is now, and working with the executive search firm, Greenwood Asher. What I love about that position is that it exposed me to a side of university athletics or university spirit that I really hadn't paid a lot of attention to. And that is when you're looking for executive leadership, you find that that pool is not where you want it to be.
Mhm.
So around December, I just completed a consulting job at a school down in Florida. It was supposed to be a 2-month job, ended up 2 years, just to get things straightened out. But what I want to say to everyone on there, those who are current ADs and those who are aspiring athletic directors, first of all, I even feel funny saying athletic director now. If you look at the landscape now, it's vice president of athletic affairs. You're seeing deputy athletic directors who are working under the vice president. And so it sounds great. The money is great. But the thing that you have to be understanding is that it is now an executive position. So that means the expectations have been elevated. And so when I came aboard at Greenwood Asher is an executive search firm that is known for finding A+ leaders as presidents, deans, vice presidents, even in the medical education field. They were very well known for helping it place women of color and people of color, and that was their specialty. It was started by 2 white females who moved from faculty members to presidents. And what they noticed is in the strategic positions, there were very few women and there were very few Black and brown people. So they decided to do something about it and started a search firm. And I'm very familiar now that they've helped place a lot of, they don't do the hiring, they provide a pool. So what I want to start off by saying is the leadership has changed. And what I'm about now, my passion now is helping prepare current and expiring ADs for the world now. What presidents and chancellors are saying, they want transformative leaders. They want leaders who understand, I have a course going on tonight. Matter of fact, I may have to go off a little early tonight. I have a 6:30 leadership class. And what I'm saying to them is you need to be prepared to know how to align your operations in athletics with the mission and vision of a university. It's amazing to me, even when I'm consulting, I've been consulting for the last 8 years since I retired. And it's amazing to me to walk on campus to speak to presidents, speak to vice presidents, and especially athletic directors who haven't even looked at the vision statement for that institution. And so right away, when I go into consulting, that's the first thing I want to do. And I tell them when you're going for the interview, don't go to an interview until you read that mission and vision. Yeah. And there are another surprising thing is that a lot of folks don't understand the difference between a mission statement and a vision statement. And so in this course, we define those things to understand the mission is why you're there, why everybody on that campus is there. Every job you have is working toward that mission. But the vision statement tells you how you get better, how you make your decisions to make sure you maintain that mission that's been around for years. And what I've learned over my years in athletics is you can go to the NCAA, you can go to leadership schools they have, you are not hearing a conversation about how you align your operation with mission and vision. Yeah. And I was on a podcast with some of the HBCUs on the Texas, Arkansas area. And one of the presidents said in there, and she was talking about presidents, is that as HBCUs, if we don't get presidents in those positions that know how to align their operation with a clear vision, we're not going to be around very much longer. Yeah. But as she says that, I'm saying to myself, we're not even having that conversation in athletics. So my goal now is to help train. I've spent the entire summer, all through COVID-19, getting a course developed called the Master Leadership Training Course for Athletics. Mm-hmm. And this course is designed to train and prepare current and aspiring leaders how to elevate their education. Greenwood Asher's mantra is, we elevate leaders and the institutions they serve. So with that, I'll end there and let others get in. But it's very important that we recognize, first of all, that it is an executive position. If you can't recognize that, then you can't think it.
Yeah.
If you can't see it, you can't do it. And I'm telling you now, we're looking for a sustainable culture. Listen to the word culture. And I will leave you with this for now. You change the culture, you change the game.
Mhm. Chico, thank you for that. And forgive me for putting you at North Carolina Central. I have no idea. I know you was at Winston-Salem. So,
Yeah,
but thank you for that correction and thank you for
that's
all the work
okay.
that you've done. So I want to move to you, Kiki, and let me just tell you how much you inspire so many of us in your role, not just women, but also males and young girls. And you have transformed the game in college athletics by your leadership, and you have created trust amongst your leaders, and you are sitting on several boards. You are a trailblazer. You are running a commissioner's office and you are running your athletics office. And there's something about you that makes people want you in that seat. So can you talk a little bit about how you have reimagined when you got in this, right? How did you reimagine? And you probably didn't even know you probably knew what you was doing because you're Kiki, but how did you see yourself in these positions and in your role and being a leader? And as Chico said, understanding how to integrate in the mission and vision that match with your own.
Yeah. Oh man, first of all, thank you so much for those beautiful words. I absolutely love what I do. Let me just say that. I absolutely love working here. I've had the opportunity now to work for 3 different presidents here at Dillard University in my role as athletic director. But also in terms of my work with as the commissioner, I've also had the opportunity to work with our conference member school presidents, and it has been a very enlightening journey. I don't know if when I started, I envisioned what I have right now. I didn't see it enveloping into what it is, but I will tell you, as Dr. Caldwell spoke about earlier in terms of the position transitioning, one of the things that I saw as something that I wanted to see better in terms of what we do is how we operate and being strategic in moving our universities forward. So he was absolutely right when he said that in this role, you have to be able to align the vision of the athletics program along with what's happening with the entire institution. And I'll tell you, the first time that I had an opportunity to speak on that, I was asked to do a presentation for women leaders, actually called Managing Up. And I thought about it. I was like, who better to do that presentation, because this is what I do. How do you go and you rebuild a program after it's totally been decimated by a pandemic? Katrina was the first one. This is number 2 for me. So I remember saying at the beginning of COVID, I said, y'all, we already done this before. We're going to be all right. That was initially my statement to the staff. I can tell you 15 years later, we're here, we're a lot better. But one of the things that I did learn in the process was we needed resources, and the resources were scarce, and we're competing on campus for the same resources. So how do I get the things that we need that will help the institution move forward? I had to learn how to speak president's language. I had to learn the language of data. And then how that data aligns with what the bigger goal is. So one of the things we talk about here, and again, Dillard University is a small, private, historically Black college and university. The way we talk about resources and revenue is a little bit different. When you look at our revenue model, our revenue model for our university is based on net tuition revenue. So I'm not having a conversation about ticket sales and corporate sponsorships. I'm having a conversation about how do we get more students to increase our enrollment? Because when we increase our enrollment, we move our university forward, and now we have more resources. Now, that's not to say I still don't have to do the corporate piece, but the larger piece of this is what aligns with the entire university's mission. Okay, we have to do that. So I learned that, okay, I've got to understand retention. Yeah. Retention is a part of that number, recruitment. And I'll tell you that I learned those things in my doctoral program. So the doctoral program was the equalizer for me. That was where I started learning, oh, athletics is a part of a larger part of this. It's not just what's happening over here, but we've got faculty, and then there's student success. And then how does the student athlete experience connect with student success? And what strategies are we actually using on the athletic side that may help our recruiters, our first year experience? So I was able to start seeing where there were similarities in the work that we were doing in terms of recruitment. I can look at our retention numbers. I actually just got a report recently. Our retention numbers for first year are for athletics are between at the low 71 to 98%. So when you're looking at growing something, you want to be able to retain. They used to say it's always cheaper to keep it. Yeah. Y'all heard that before, right? It made more sense if we can get students here and we can keep the students, then we keep more revenue. We're not spending as much money to have to keep bringing in a new person to replace someone else. So when I was able to sit at the table with our president, with our cabinet, because actually I'm not on cabinet, but I had to have the opportunity to go in and I had to have the conversation. Well, my conversation is right in line with what they're talking about. We're not talking about winning games. We do win, just so you know, we do win. But that's not the conversation I was having with our president, because that doesn't necessarily move the needle for the institution. It's how does athletics help move this thing to move the needle for the institution? We unify our community. That's one way athletics can do that for the institution. Number two, and we can contribute to making sure we can get more students here. Maybe we should look at adding more sports, because we can show you our retention numbers are higher. And we know retention equals to growth. And so that conversation and being executive and understanding the language of the institution and aligning with the strategic vision is what is key to being able to help the team win. And who better, and let me just say this, who better than the athletic director? Who knows better than to how to rally a team together? Sports. We're the ones that do that better than anybody.
Yeah. I agree, Kiki. I always say, working in sports it galvanizes community.
Yes.
You have every touch point. So as a conference office, I'll get to you in a second, Jason, you have the opportunity to work with corporate partners and build relationships, and not just bring them for the conference, but really for your institution.
Yes.
Right? You get to create championships and make deals with host cities. Like, we get the ability to do contract agreements. So we're thinking strategically, short and long term, what those experiences look like on a contractual to give exposure to all of our schools and our students. I love what you talked about, the whole, the more students and the retention, because I've seen a lot of, and COVID makes it a little tough when athletics is your primary source of retention and bringing students for numbers. I've seen private schools do a really good job in recruiting more, at adding more sports, using more sports and aligning themselves with their president on making sure that they do their part on the enrollment management. But COVID makes it difficult, right? If your enrollment is mostly athletics, you're having to shift, but there's still opportunities to manage that. Jason, I want to ask you.
Jackie, before you move on, I want to add one thing that also that AD should consider, VPs for athletics should consider, is that research has proven, Kiki talked about data. You look at the data, there's two things that have been proven in research. Is one, that athletics, even at a small institution, is about $1.5 million of marketing money. Every time you go on the road, every time you go, that's about $1.5 million that advertises not just sports, but they begin to look at every program you have on campus. The second research that I was involved in my PhD is that when you look at recruiting and retention, and that's one thing I'm glad Kiki mentioned, because you can't look at enrollment without retention if you're trying to grow. But for every student athlete that is recruited in any sport, 5 students follow that are non-athletes for enrollment. So it's not just so, at the smaller schools, you're right, especially NAIA, they build their enrollment around athletics, the more sports, whatever. But in the NCAA, that's a little bit more difficult to do. But the thing that you look at is that the enrollment piece comes from whether that's superstar you've signed or it's a player who's on the bench. They all will influence from their areas the average of 5, some or more after the first year. And then in year 2, it's still 3 to 5 students are coming to that institution from that.
Yeah.
So you can retain those athletes.
Yep.
Those folks, each year they go home from that year, they bring in 3 more folks back with them.
Yeah.
And multiply that time the number of athletes you have in your program.
Yeah, Chico, I agree. When I worked at the NCAA and worked with men's Final Four, and every time our HBCUs got an AQ or they got to play in it, I would tell their presidents, you are about to see some growth. You're not even going to understand why, because once you get in that tournament and the exposure through the television and the exposure to the athletes on your campuses, there's something that attracts other students to want to be a part of it. I totally agree. Yeah. Jason, I heard you were the steady lunchbox today. You got a lot of stuff packed in and ready to move and shake. And so appreciate your time here and love working with your commissioner. And you are truly blessed to work with someone who understands strategy. I'm interested in knowing from you, and again, you've been a vice president of athletics at an institution, not an assistant vice president, let me say that, at an institution, and now you're in a conference. And so you get to see, you've been on the campus, but now you're in a conference and you get to see how athletic directors and coaches are moving. What do you think is missing in preparation for coaches and ADs to move in these executive leadership? And maybe there's nothing missing, but is there a gap that you see in the conference office that you would like to see more of our athletic directors and coaches doing so that we can make sure that they're in the pipeline for these positions that Chico is talking about in preparation?
Yes. Well, first I'll say this. I'm very inspired to be on the call. Dr. Coach Caldwell and Dr. Barnes, you had me prepared to go out and get 20 and 30 rebounds or points, however.
Yeah. We winning all the time.
But yeah, very fortunate to be on this panel. I follow each of you guys' career, and so it's a privilege to sit here today. But to go back to your question, I think one thing that continues to develop is the competitiveness. As a coach, you're competitive during games, but there's a competitiveness off the floor that is needed in administration. And with being competitive, you have to be innovative and creative. And so as we talk about meeting the mission and vision of the institution or the mission and vision of the conference, you have to be creative and innovative to do so. Sponsorships, people are not just giving you money, it's an investment. So you have to create leverage, you have to create something that's attractive and something that you can sustain. And I think that just the forethought, being strategic as a coach is not just X's and O's. You are a part of the fabric of the institution. You have a responsibility to grow the institution. You have a responsibility to bring in external funding. And I think something that's universal is that over the last 20 years, we have seen state funds dwindle. I know as a student athlete and as a coach, I think that number may have been 80% as it relates to state funding going towards athletics, making up the budget. That number may be closer to 60%. So it becomes more imperative to be innovative and creative in the way you go about soliciting funds, not only as an administrator, not only as a conference office, but as you transition to becoming a head coach, from assistant coach to a head coach, have that in mind. As you transition, if you're a head coach looking to get into administration or get into the conference office, keep that in mind too. You have to be competitive, innovative, and creative.
Yeah. You guys have any thoughts about what he just said?
Actually, I do. I think I like what you said when you said that the competition is on. There's a lot of competition amongst the sports, but not maybe as much of the competitive edge we see from administrators. And one of the things that I think limits that, and I will tell you, when I initially started, I used to be really frustrated. I always hear this kind of stuff. Well, we don't have. And that is I hate that disposition. I really do. I detest hearing what we don't have. You can't have success when you've already lost. It's like going in the game saying, well, they have, like, who cares what they have? What do we have and how do we leverage that? And so one of the things that I've seen And I can tell you, just being at a small HBCU with myself, an administrative assistant, and an SID, those are my 3 administrative positions here. With the conference office, I have all part-time people. With those things, we fully live stream. We have an updated website. We have full social media, marketing, all of that going on. And one of the reasons why is because we leverage technology and automation. And one of the things I feel like we really need to see from administrators, and there's a book I'm reading called The Gatekeepers Are Gone, Hustle, Technology, and Success. It's by a guy, Lamar Tyler. He's an entrepreneurial media kind of guru guy. And basically the premise of the book is all of the challenges that were challenges and that would prevent us from telling our story or being able to transform how we do things have been taken away because we have technology and automation. There are so many things. You don't need as many people, but you have to be creative as Dr. Cable just shared. And you have to be willing to see things a little bit differently. So one of the things I would like to see in terms of executive administrators is how we leverage technology, automation, and using data to level the playing field, because it really is. We can go straight to YouTube Live now. We don't need the media to show up to tell our story. We don't need them to communicate for us in terms of our operations. So I remember when I first started, you know, I was the AD and the women's basketball coach and SID at some point in this thing, right? So I'm trying to do a website. I got people reaching out to me saying that they want to, you know, be on my team or they want to play for me. So I was like, but I want to respond to everybody, because you hear things like, well, we never get a response back from anybody in HBCU. So I learned a new program, a form manager that was a part of the website. I created a canned response email that would give them specific things, how to reach out to me to get eligible. Here's where you need to go. Send me your film. And they get an automatic reply. Just in terms of customer service, automating that process. All of a sudden now it's like, man, you know, I heard from them immediately. I got email right back. And then I'd start getting the stuff. But how do we automate the processes and the things that we do so that we operate more efficiently? And so I think that's a part of the executive piece of this. And then I can spend my time doing things that make more sense, developing relationships, cultivating donors. That's where I need to spend my time.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things I like to hear, because it's like, well, I don't have an assistant. There wasn't a time where I actually didn't have an assistant, and automation did that for me. And so in terms of leadership, how do we do things? Finding ways. And I'm telling you, there's technology there to help us. But as leaders, we have to be willing to expand our skill set.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to grow. That's kind of what Dr. Caldwell was talking a little bit about earlier. We have to understand some things differently so that we can use those automations to make our jobs easier, and we can focus on the real work that matters, whatever that is, in which role you're in.
Yeah. Chico, what do you think about all of that?
Well, I was thinking, you know, as both of our guests were talking, is that, you know, there's a question that I always pose at the cabinet meetings, you know, when because I'm like Kiki, I hate to hear we always did it this way or we never done it that way. You know, the last person tried it, it didn't work. I hate those. When I walk into an institution, I tell them on the first meeting, don't ever come in this meeting and tell them what we can't do. We have a vision statement that's clear. And every single decision we make, we're going to ask the question, is that decision consistent with our vision? So whether you're talking about technology, whether you're talking about fundraising, and one of the things I did that was something I'd done before as an AD, as a consultant with the institution I was working with in Florida, I actually taught the coaches how to write a vision statement. I taught them how to align their vision statement with the athletic department's vision statement, which I made sure was aligned with the institution vision statement. And we're talking about how it ties it in, because there's this concept that I've seen, as particularly small schools, that, you know, they got us down here, we don't want them in our building, and they don't want us in there. It's kind of attitude. And it was still existing down there. I was shocked to still see that now in this day and time. But one of the things we did, we didn't have football at that institution. They brought me in as a consultant, and they had no athletic director. So and they were about to be kicked out of the conference. And so I was able to take write a vision. They never had a procedure manual. They never had a vision statement in the athletic department. And the vision statement for the institution has not been reviewed since 2009. I mean, so no one was operating by vision statement. You could tell why so much was out of sync. So we took to the athletic department, added a clear vision statement, and we followed it. The baseball team had not won any games. That was the top program. And Jackie, you mentioned about how when the programs are successful, how it impacts enrollment. The baseball team made it to the finals of the baseball season, the conference championship, lost with a home run on the last pitch of the game. We were up by 1. But because of that success, the summer school enrollment and the fall enrollment tripled, the highest enrollment it's seen. And when the coaches saw that, and I took the same idea that Kiki talked about, is see how we influence enrollment. We don't need to talk about not having money. We need to talk about how we can improve enrollment and how can we retain them. And one of the things that the challenge is, they wanted to bring in all of these JV teams to make up enrollment. So I had to sit around the table with the cabinet men, and that makes sense to get enrollment. But the problem when you have that many athletes, you can't retain them all. So every year you're replacing them. Let's try improving those numbers of quality students we bring in. And from there, we retain them and we grow. And so that's how we grow enrollment. So you're absolutely right, Dr. Cooper, Capel, I mean. You know, I'm fumbling around with that because every time I hear Capel, I think about Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, but anyway, I really think that's important that we learn and we go to training. You mentioned one key thing, Kiki, and that is we have to look at how we prepare for leadership now.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get by with it anymore.
Yeah.
The buddy system is gone.
Yeah.
You're not going to be hired because you know somebody. You've got to know it. I'll be honest, women are taking the time to prepare themselves for leadership. We've got a lot of gentlemen coming around, but I noticed in my last class that I had 55 people enrolled. And we had 26 to stay. Out of that 26, 24 were females, never missed a session.
Wow.
And the first to get interviews after that course were all females. And they made it to the final 2. One has the job now. Another one did not get the job at the institution, but the city hired her to be over program just from the interview at the institution.
Wow.
Because they spoke the language of the administrators around the table. It's very important. So I'll say it again. Let's face it, the landscape has changed. We got to prepare for it.
Yeah, Chico, I appreciate that. The landscape has changed. I'm always happy when I see women. Let me tell you, we've been trailblazers for a long time. We just need opportunities for access and somebody to open up the door and let us sit at the table. And then we're going to run with it. So I appreciate you sharing that and just what you're doing to ensure that women are getting those opportunities and getting prepared. So I want to shift a little bit on some things that you all said, because we talked a lot about just the strategic thinking in the enrollment, retention, what presidents are probably looking for or what they need, right? In this new reimagining. Yes.
Can I mention one thing before you
Sure.
shift gears?
Sure.
Because one of the things I have done now, I've been invited to do a couple of even during COVID, we had a retreat for an athletic department. And what I've done with that is that I would first contact the university to find out where they are in their strategic plan.
Yeah.
And so I just did one in Virginia for an institution, and they had just finished their 5-year plan, and they had listed their 5 priorities. So what I did was align my presentation with every strategic priority, all 5, how it aligned with it. And the coaches were telling me in that session, in the retreat, they had never even thought about priorities. They never thought about this. And see, the AD sent me what their retreat priorities were. So what I did was align the retreat priorities with those 5 priorities that the strategic plan for the college was.
Yeah.
And the president came and sat through the entire retreat. I had never been in a retreat where the president was there from day one. He took part in all of the activities around it and stayed until day one. And afterwards he said, I heard your presentation about the trends of vice president. Immediately after the retreat was over, he went to the board of trustees and recommended that they upgrade the new AD they just hired. You all may know her, Tanya Walker. And she's now the vice president for athletic affairs and sitting around the table, helping the university with strategic planning. And she's not having those conversations about winning. She's having a conversation about how to improve enrollment and some other things.
Yeah,
that's what the chancellor.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that, because that's where I wanted to pivot, and you just did a good pivot on the whole. That's pivot. That's what we do. You just pass the ball back. We work in college sports, so that's
all
what
right, there you go.
Your
shot now.
Yeah. So, the whole strategic and the integration of athletics, it is it's a bigger picture than just running your programs, right? Your strategic plan should align with the university on how. I'm not sure, Jason, with you, but our conference strategic plan is aligned with all of our institutions are doing and what historically Black colleges are about, in the foundation of leadership, not just sports, but leadership and community. So we've integrated that, and our board has approved that. But the one thing that I know that's so important in leadership, even if you have a strategic plan, we're in COVID-19. You have been through Katrina. I've been through North Carolina House Bill 2 and all the other things in between. Crisis management is so important, but so is also emotional intelligence, as you would say, emotional capital, right? So can you all talk a little bit about that as we're moving and you're seeing the shift, the importance of having that as you're trying to move in leadership and connect with your president? Because I think if you don't have that, how do you connect with your presidents for them to support what you're doing, but also to make sure that you're in alignment on the decisions that are going to be made in totality for your athletic department? And any of you could jump in here.
I'll hop in. That
was a lot, wasn't it?
That's a lot. Crisis management. When I think about crisis management, I think of the word courage. Because when things are tough, people get scared. You don't know what's going on. And I think it takes a lot of courage to lead during a crisis, and lead well, at least in a crisis. One of the key things that I think is critical in crisis management is honest communication. Call the thing the thing. This is a really tough time. This is hard. Acknowledge that. Again, that was the first thing I did. I acknowledge when, maybe I don't know at this point, but together we can make it through. So I think communication and being transparent is critical. Saying what it is. One of the first things I said to my staff when I realized that this was not going to go away quickly and it wasn't a quick fix like we thought, as it was, I've seen this before, we've been here before. Here is my priority. If I can keep you employed, and if I can keep all of our kids on scholarships, whether we play or not, I really don't care. At the end of the day, whatever strategy we come up with, that's what I'm trying to do. Now, we will get in the war room, and we're going to go through every scenario we can. And we've done that for the last 6 months, probably just like everyone else. Conference, the same thing. How do we live to fight another day? I don't necessarily have all the answers, but I am willing to meet you in the room and for us to go through this together. And here's my promise to you. I'm going to keep you abreast and I'm going to communicate, and you won't be surprised by anything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's courageous, because sometimes what I see is we don't want to acknowledge that there's something going on, and we want to pretend, and we walk around things and everybody's on eggshells because nobody wants to say what it is. But you have to be courageous in your communication, and you have to be transparent when you're leading people. This has been a very stressful time for our nation. And the least we could do as a leader is be honest.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to add to that. And one of the things, I was raised by a scientist. And he always used to tell me he's a physics and chemistry instructor. So if you spoke to my father, it was all about science. He always said, if you can't believe the science, then no need to be talking to you. And so what Kiki just described is actually science-based. And the course I teach is science-based. So what you're talking about is that when it comes to management period, but particularly in a crisis, you got to have a foundation. And that foundation is character, courage, and commitment. And so the first thing is, what is the character for? Well, you spoke to that, Kiki, very well. Being honored, there's a unit that I teach is engaging your responsibility with honor. And then that encompasses everything you mentioned there, Kiki. But the key and the umbrella around character, commitment, and courage is communication. Communication, communication, communication. And that foundation is your vision. See, you never let go of your vision because you know how, what we call, check back. You're going to make mistakes. And because of the, what COVID-19 has done is everything is uncertain. You can sit in the room today and make some beautiful plans, and for what you just experienced, it will work. But tomorrow, COVID-19 changes it again. So with that foundation of courage, commitment, character, and a clear vision, you know how to check back and get back on course. And see, that's the problem that we're seeing in athletics. We've seen it a lot at HBCUs. We do a lot of good things, but when we make mistakes, we didn't have that foundation to know how to check back and correct and get back on course. And that's because we didn't have a clear vision. And well, we made a mistake there, or we underestimated something. We're off course, so they just stay on that course. They never try to check back. So checking back.
But I want to say that when you talk about that, sometimes we don't have a culture, and this is in leadership, and I'm not specifically talking about HBCUs, but there has to be a space where we can truly be honest without repercussion.
Yeah.
And so what do I mean by that? That, Dr. Kimbrough has an executive council. The executive council on our campus is all of the leadership. That's cabinet, that's directors and mid-level leadership. And that's kind of our space to hash it out. Now, I can tell you, I'm probably the truth teller. I'm the person that's going to push the button and say, well, maybe we need to think differently. But what if I had a boss where you couldn't be truthful? Absolutely. You couldn't actually say what it is. Well, how do we get to the best decision that will move us forward when we don't have a culture of honesty in our communication? When we have challenges, we need to be able to say, call it what it is.
Yeah.
And it's not a personal attack, but it is required if you're going to actually grow. And so that's one of the things that's really critical, I feel like, in leadership, being able to create a culture of honesty and communication. And as he said, the check back is being able to hear from people that you may lead. You're the boss, but guess what? Each person on your team brings something to the team. They have something to offer. You have to create a space to hear, to truly hear what they have to say, and then vet all of the things that you've heard and that have been thrown onto the table to determine a direction that we can move forward, that again, hopefully moves us forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And culture is an interesting word to use. And now I'm a person who believes that there's always a culture. Everything has a culture. And culture is what we either allow or create.
Yeah.
And when we're in the mindset of creating a success culture, then you are building those foundations. You're open and honest. You're building those relationship, that relationship capital I talked about earlier, where you are honest with each other. So you can't do that if you don't have that capital. I can't be honest with you and prevent you from getting all personal about it if we don't have that capital of that relationship.
Yeah.
So culture is what we allow or create. I'm all about creating success culture, and it starts with learning how to create that culture by aligning values and principles before you start doing, the action and results piece of it.
Yeah. Jason, what do you think about all of this?
I think that I'll just add two things. I think when Dr. Barnes talked about being courageous, being transparent, Dr. Caldwell talked about a foundation. I think all of those things allow you to be decisive and precise. And so a drawback to my time as a student athlete, I mean, if it's 30 seconds left on the clock, your foundation is you practice the whole year and the coach already has something for you to do when it's 30 seconds left on the clock down by 2. And so you have that confidence to be decisive and precise. And whether that play is the right play for that particular time, I mean, that's what you've been doing. That's what you're confident in. And so 9 times out of 10, you're able to execute. So I think just to add on to what Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Barnes have said, I think once you have the foundation, the communication, you're transparent, you're courageous, you're able to make decisive and precise decisions and execute.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was writing some notes down, and what I've said since COVID is starting, that I'm watching leaders rise and I'm watching leaders fall. And it is apparent. And I'm watching, and it's not just athletic directors, right? Leadership starts at all levels. Our student athletes, I've watched them step up. I've seen our ADs step up. I've seen our senior women administrators step up. And it's important because as we're talking about imagining the role of leadership, it starts at the position that you're currently in, right? So your visibility starts, are you a team player no matter what your position is? If you're sitting on the bench and you're called to come in, can you help the culture succeed, right? And so as leaders, we get to create the culture. And I think that's part of this whole reimagining, that do our athletic directors, do our student athletes, do our coaches who even want to transition into the roles, do they understand the importance of how leaders fall and how they rise? It's not just about getting the title, but how do you reimagine yourself when you get it so that you can impact a culture that will help you move the mission with the institution? And that's ultimately the president that gets to hire you, who has their own pressures. That's another thing. I'm teeing you up to be a part of this conversation. Because as a leader, I understand that the decisions that are made above me, that there are pressures on that side. And so I have to tell my team as a commissioner, you are just going to have to trust that whatever I bring here, I'm doing it in the best interest. Because I'm communicating, I'm being transparent, but I know there's a side of this that they're not even ready to deal with, right? I've got to let the cards play out based on the leadership. So I don't know what I'm asking you. I'm just throwing this out here based on what I said. How do you see that play out? And I'm talking about there's all roles of leadership. We're talking about reimagining athletic directors and coaches being in these leadership roles. But there's some tactical things that they have to do in the current roles that they're in to even get to be seen as a vice president of athletics and get to be on that leadership team that they may desire. And they're watching their colleagues get vice president. They're watching their white institutions that have been doing it because they're creating barriers in between roles now, right? We can talk about caste systems later, but they're creating barriers that makes them different in the roles. How do we prepare every level to be in a role, to create a culture, to impact and help your president be successful?
Ooh,
Well,
that's heavy.
The first thing I would say, there's a life law number one is either you get it or you don't. There's a it that we all have to get. And that it is the landscape has changed. So if you want to be an AD now, and we also see part of my process, I'm talking to a lot of presidents as many as I can, because I'm hearing some admit they're being transparent. I want an executive leader in my athletic department, but I don't know what it looks like. I don't know whether they walk in my office and I know what they look like. So we're having conversation with the presidents of what it looks like to have an executive leader. If you're looking around the table at your vice president, that's your first clue. And you want people who can sit around that table and speak strategically, just like everybody else. If you're leaving your AD out of the strategic planning, you're leaving them. The third largest budget of your university is usually athletic department. You're leaving it out. And they said, I never thought about that. And in some institutions, it may be the largest budget. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to get it, because life law number 2 is you create your own experience. And if you don't get that hit you got to get, you're going to get the experience that you end up with. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that it's twofold. There's nothing worse than having a president who does not have an executive in that position today. Yeah. But what's worse is to have an executive leader as a president, but you have as an AD, but the president doesn't understand that role. They're still seeing that AD as the old coach. I was an AD for 17 years after coaching basketball. I was called coach in every meeting until the last 5. Hey, coach, I had to remind them I haven't coached in 10 years, but it was still, they saw me as the coach. And I also had that director title. So you're sitting around, what did Caldwell have to bring of any value as a director? Mm-hmm. And when I would come up with these ideas strategically, then there was intimidation. How do you know these things? Wait a minute, I didn't think about that. So it was the last 5 years when I began to get that respect of an executive. So when I retired, I said, I'm going to commit my last years to helping aspiring leaders to understand, as Kiki said, you got to go in and talk their language. And you can't do it thinking I'm still the coach. See, it's all right for them to think that you're still the coach, but if you think you're still the coach and you want to be the AD, you're already behind the 8 ball.
You guys hold that real quick, but I want to know, because I know there's a lot of, there are coaches that have worked and got their PhD. They're still coaching and really desire to transition, men and women. Mm-hmm. Is that opportunity still exists? Can a president see a coach be an athletic director? And if so, what are things that they need to do? Because we're talking about reimagining, and a coach is trying to reimagine themselves in a role, but people still see them as a coach.
Yeah. Well, I would agree that there a lot of presidents are behind on that, and they've grown up with this perception of coaches and ADs, and unfortunately, just like anything else, there are coaches who still forget that they're ADs. And forget they're not coaches anymore. So the first step is what we're doing. I talked to a couple in the MEAC, several in the CIAA, about identifying that. First of all, on both ends, the AD, the coach has to understand, I'm not going to be a coach anymore. I've got a class tomorrow morning with 2 coaches, one basketball and football, who are aspiring to be an AD. And at first, when they started looking at these strategic planning, they were like, oh man, this is what we got to do. But as the course went on, they're saying, man, this I'm gaining, as you said earlier, Cable, is that confidence is building up. Now I understand that if I follow these processes that are scientifically based, I can do this. And I know how to get this done. And so it's like part of it is changing. If you're trying to take a person who, an athlete, who's got the skills, but they don't have the confidence. You see, and you begin to teach that athlete those skills where they can show improvement. You're transparent. You talk about and hear their story. And all of a sudden, they begin to see what you were saying. If I do it this way, that confidence comes. It's the same thing with leadership. And so what I'm doing in the course, first of all, my biggest challenge is get that transformation to take place in what you think of yourself.
Yeah.
I'm the coach. You find guys who get the jobs now as coach and AD, and they go in there, I'm a coach. I don't want to be going to those meetings over there. And so, but you want to be an AD, you got to make that transformation. And I can tell you, I bet you, I did see all of Kiki's transformation from coach to AD and now to commissioner. But I can tell by watching and following her over these years, she made those transitions into what she saw herself. Yeah. And once you get that respect within you, you can earn that respect of others by walking the walk, talking the talk as an executive administrator.
That's real. When I think about a reimagined position, and I guess this would be what I would say to a university president. Here are the 5 things you're looking for from your next executive leader. 1, you're looking for an executive leader who can cast vision, who can communicate the vision, who can build consensus around that vision, who can connect communities to that vision, and who can carry out that vision. Those
Amen.
are the 5 things when I think about this next level executive administrator that you're looking for that person to be able to do. I think it's really critical in terms of, because I was a coach, AD, I think it's really critical in your preparation that you learn the lingo, learn the language. You have to get outside of the athletic realm. You have to participate in university committees. Like, so there was we just had a recent committee that of university personnel to redo our mission and vision statement. There was a student success committee that I was a member of. I'm trying to think of some other committees. I may have sat on something with Res Life at some point. I went to faculty meetings. And in each of those opportunities, I started learning about what my colleagues were doing. And as I listened to them, I learned how to communicate, how I could help them. Like, I learned to do things better. I remember working with business and finance. Like, I never understood why it would take so long to process paperwork. So I'm really upset one day and I haven't gotten something that I wanted. So I actually go over to the office because I need this check and I need it now. And I sit down, and that turned into a conversation with my colleague. Had no idea the ton of things that went into that process. So when I heard and understood what was going on there, I said, well, maybe we could do this differently, and this will help your situation, and we have a better situation where we don't drop the ball. So getting outside of your sphere in athletics is really critical. You need to know what happens in the business and finance office. You need to know what's happening with the faculty. You need to understand what's happening in student success. What are the drivers? And then if there is a place where you can be of service or you can assist, then you show up. Our team, our entire athletic department always worked alumni reunion. Our alumni reunions during graduation, we always were the volunteers to help with registration. And that's where we learn and we meet people and we understand what's going on in other places. So when it's time to have a conversation about what's happening, I can speak to each person I need to speak to in order to get something done that moves our program forward. And it's also part of the bigger picture. But you would never know those things if you don't talk and if you don't interact and seek to learn more about what's happening within your organization. And that's also the opportunity for people to get to know more about you.
Yeah.
Relationship capital.
Yes, sir.
Jason?
Yes, I'll just add, and it's tough coming behind these two. It's so detailed. But being the neophyte of the group, I don't mind partaking in some of the knowledge as well. But I think when you start talking about developing a path line or a pathway to the athletic director seat, from a coach or assistant coach or someone that's not quite in an administration, I think that executive leaders have a responsibility to create opportunities and access. And I think that Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Barnes, you are both doing that in terms of reaching down to give a hand up to individuals that aspire to be athletic directors or executive leaders. And as we talk about, and I'll give an example of a head football coach in our league, Dr. Donald Ely, he just got his PhD from Oregon State. And so he's the CEO of his program. And you can tell when you talk to him that he may have some other aspirations in mind in terms of the next steps with his career. So he's taken a step to get his PhD. And he's also in the process of developing coaches that think like him, through outreach. So I think that's important. And then also to touch upon what you said, Dr. Barnes, about going out and learning other areas, you have to be versatile and you have to be open. I just draw back on my time as a coach and transition into administration. I never thought that I would work in compliance. I hated compliance. Compliance was the enemy. They always told you no. But my gateway to administration was working in compliance. So I became the person that all the coaches hated at some point, right? And so, but I was open, and I added that to my toolbox and made me more versatile. And now I'm on my way to becoming a more executive leader. So I'll stop there, but just great information. And I'm always amazed by you three, in terms of your knowledge and the way you present. So.
Hey, Jason, I'm glad you brought up Donald Hill-Ely. He's a very dear, good friend and colleague of mine. He went to Virginia Union and played football. And then we worked together at Morgan State when I was there as administrator. And I will tell you, I hope he's okay with me putting him, because you already put him on blast, but that is an example. And we have a couple of coaches in our conference now, same thing. They are extremely collaborative. Although they are trying to win for their program, they're trying to win for the entire university. And he is one that I've seen that has tried to work with other programs, regardless of what he's getting and what he's doing, he's brought them in the fold. And so when you see that, that's the demonstration to me of a leader reimagining their role, because leadership is not siloed, right? Leadership is about culture, and it is about connecting dots to build a better culture. I always say, if we just stay together, we can win more games, right? But there's always one or two players that want to play on the sideline, or didn't bring their shoes, or forgot their socks. And in HBCUs, we don't have the leisure to do that. This community of HBCUs and leaders, particularly in college athletics, where fans and alumni love us. Now, let's be clear, out of COVID, we still had homecoming this fall. They were virtual. There was no football games, but people are connected to athletics. Basketball will be even harder. It is a place where we build our communities in historically Black colleges and universities. And our presidents love it too. I don't know about your conferences, but in the CIAA, they come with title rings in board meetings to brag about who has the most championships before we even get in the conversation, which is a great starting point, because we did just talk about competitiveness, right? And we talked about creating a culture where we're all winning. We might be individuals, but when we get down to the business as an institution, we're trying to win the game collectively. And so the reimagining the role is so beyond just the title. There's a responsibility that comes with it. And I appreciate and value just the leadership that you all have shown. And Jason, you're not I started in compliance too. So let me be clear, at Virginia Union for 10 years, and I could not get away from it. But it is the best decision that I got to do, to be in connection in the roles of leadership, to learn. And that's the piece we need to learn in these roles to get to the next level of being in higher education and what it was created to be, particularly in our space.
I had a thought, Jackie, earlier that I wanted to kind of go back to. You were talking about how we should be a team and reimagining this role of leadership and executive leadership. One of the things that I think about when I think about executive leadership and how do you make your move from, maybe middle management to the next level, is being willing to step up. So one of the very interesting things that I felt like I saw watching COVID was my need to depend on my athletic trainer and medical staff. Because this COVID was something that I'm not a biology major. I know nothing about medicine. I'm in charge. I'm the leader, but I'm not the expert in medicine. And having athletic trainers and needing them to take the lead to navigate this was one of those things where people always ask, well, do I need the title? I don't have a title. I'm not in charge. But I can tell you, what was I going to tell somebody to do about COVID? I don't know anything about I don't know anything about this infectious diseases. I can't tell you anything. I don't have a PhD in immunology. But our athletic trainers, our medical professionals, this was their time to step up and take the shot.
Yes.
And those who understood leadership. And if you understand sports, when the game is on the line, step right in.
Yeah.
I can tell you for my athletic training medical staff, everything I need, all I had to do was call. I didn't even have to worry. What should we do? I didn't have the answer, but I had someone on my team that stepped right on in. But what happens when we as executive leaders don't create the culture where people feel empowered to step up when it's their time?
Yeah.
I think that is a key thing. I don't know if we talk about that in executive leadership enough, because we get so caught up in ourselves because I'm in charge, I'm the big boss, and all of that may be true, but I ain't the expert on immunology. And when we got to the point in the game where we needed that expertise, I wasn't the one that needed to be taking that shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
agree.
Whether you're riding the train or leading the train, everybody's got to be going the same direction.
Everybody's got to go the same direction.
And that's critical. It's really critical in leadership that you understand, yeah, you're in charge, but you better understand the value of each person. And you have to allow them, you got to allow them to let them lead.
Yeah.
And support.
Yeah.
Provide everything they need. Because I promise you, I couldn't do it without them. We wouldn't have our COVID protocols and everything. I can say now, you can go to our website, we have our COVID protocols. But let me tell you, you know who put the COVID protocol together? The athletic training staff, not the athletic director.
Yeah. Same here for the conference. I mean, it is the compliance and trainers are the most critical pieces for us right now. The trainers are doing this COVID planning. They are the experts. And the compliance is making sure our student athletes know what their options are, right, for sustainability. And so having them, if they are not a part of your leadership discussion in your athletics department, you are crash and burning, because you shouldn't be. And the same thing with, as I'm noticing working with my board, I work for 12 presidents, you know, they are depending on their athletic directors to lead and guide them. So when I get on a call with 12 presidents, I am assuming that there has been a connection between the presidents and their athletic directors. And I can tell you, sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. I think COVID has allowed us to really show our weak points of communication that has brought us closer together, which, if nothing else has happened, we are a community that is really communicating and maybe over communicating. But I do think there's opportunities to take advantage in this time and showing where leaders are rising again, and how leaders bring others in to demonstrate, you know, their value add on being on your team.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I haven't talked much about the commissioner role, but that other piece of it. So they'll laugh when I say this, but I push my colleagues, my athletic directors, I push them really hard as their commissioner colleagues. And I think that I've done a really good job. And if you ask them, they'll tell you, of helping them learn to be okay with being honest, and let's get to it. Like, we're not going to get the best for the GCAC if we're around here playing around. We don't want to say it, you know, so I will say it, and I'll say it, and I'll be in your face about it. And then everybody's kind of like, okay, well, let's just say it. And we can still move forward. Yeah. But that communication and that process with my colleagues and leading them through that process, and us getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, but knowing that we have to think about this globally. We have to understand how each of us is moving and what is going to be best for us as a collective. Mm-hmm. Being able to even though we all competing against each other, I make jokes, as soon as it's over, then we're gonna beat you. Hey. But in the time that we're having that conversation, because again, I'll have to go to the presidents as commissioner. And when I do have that conversation with the Council of Presidents, I want them to be assured that this group has vetted it, that we've done all the things we need to do. We've talked to all parties. We've involved coaches. We've involved student athletes. We have all these perspectives. And after all of that conversation, here are the recommendations that we believe will help us move forward. And that they can be at peace, knowing that, okay, we trust our leadership and we can move forward.
Very good. I don't know if we have any questions from our audience, but I'll wait to see here in a minute or so because I want to start wrapping this up. But here's a question I want to ask you all because we talked about a lot. And I'm trying to reimagine my own role as commissioner, Chico, so I might need some coaching. But what I did here is, coaching is important. And I think there's resources that if individuals who are listening that are interested in transitioning, that it's important that you have some coaching and understand what the needs are in those roles that you're looking to be in. Specifically, if you want to be a vice president or a coach that wants to transition into an AD role or vice president role, and the connection between that role and the president who is looking for a transformational executive leader, because they don't want to manage your department. That's what I'm very clear. They need to run universities while you run your department, but they need to trust that you can run the department. So I want to ask you all of this, and you all have given great points. You gave 5 things, Kiki. Chico, you gave the foundation, and Jason, you kind of gave a well-rounded points on what you heard today. But if I'm a coach listening today, or an AD, or not an AD on this, or a president, what do they need to know in a quick moment? What do they need to know to prepare somebody or to look for someone who needs to imagine their role if they want to be hired by me as the president?
Well, let me start first. I'll get it quickly. First of all, we're talking about vision statement, right? So the goal to be an athletic director is a vision. And it's scientifically proven that if your behaviors are consistent with your vision, you will be successful. So for a coach who wants to be an AD, start visualizing being AD. Stop running around with the coaches, start running around with the ADs. If you want to be president, hang out with the presidents. What I did when I wanted to be AD, I hung out with the president because I wanted to know what they thought about athletic directors. So when I got my first job, I already knew what they thought about us, and I knew the trends coming. And I want to remind everybody there's a trend coming, and many of you may already know, but in about 3 years, because the vice president position is happening now, but in 3 years, mark my words, they're going to be reaching to athletic areas now for presidents. And coaches, you already know how to strategize. You just got to think about it as an executive now. You know how to put system together. I do a unit called system thinking. And Kiki, in that we talk about the terminology involved in system thinking. And so that's a part of mental leadership. So imagine and align your vision, align your behaviors with your vision. You can make it. That means going to those preparation courses, talking to Kiki, talking to Capo, talking to you, Jackie, talking to those folks who are there and making that transition from coach. But don't call yourself coach anymore. Even while you transition, get that mindset changed.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Jason, what about you? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm notorious for talking on mute, so I've done a good job. But just to add, I think that you have to invest in yourself. I can't count how many times that I've gone to conferences on my own dime. It may not have been in the budget, but I knew that I needed to meet people. I knew that I needed to connect myself, like Dr. Caldwell was saying, with people that were in the position where I wanted to be. And so in doing that, it may cost you a little money, but the reward is great on the other end. And so you just have to be vigilant, invest in yourself, take advantage of opportunities, continue to diversify your portfolio. And so when you get in front of these people, and we talked about this a little earlier, you get in front of athletic directors, you get in front of presidents, in front of people at the conference office, you're able to speak their language. And I think that really aids in the process in terms of transitioning from coach to an executive leader.
Yeah. Awesome. Dr. Barnes?
Well, first of all, y'all hit the nail right on the head. I agree and echo all of their sentiments already. I have a quote that I say in a couple of presentations that I do, and it simply is: commitment to your craft will lend credibility to your competency. And that kind of, you've got to be committed to being a better leader, as Jason just shared, you know, to invest in yourself. Dr. Caldwell talked about some of the work that he's doing. At some point, I'm hoping to be transitioning and doing some leadership development work as well. So I'm working on some things that are forthcoming in terms of leadership development and coaching. So I just, it's coming, y'all. So I need y'all to continue to follow me. If you want to be able to connect with me and get information when that does happen, you can actually text Dr. Kiki, that's DRKIKI, to 38470, and it'll give you a link where you can subscribe. And so whenever I get that going, you'll be the first to know. So
love it. Love it. Well, I have appreciated the time with you. And let me just say this: vision, get your mission, know the vision of where you're going and who you want to be with in the path of reaching your vision. Terminology is so important. I admire all my sisters and brothers who got their PhD. I started and cannot finish that thing, but God is still good. Terminology is important to understand the language, particularly in higher education, and understanding what presidents and universities need from that.
You should have told us that. We're gonna push you now.
Oh, Lord.
Everybody.
And the invest in yourself. If you want to be a college athletic director, if you're a coach and want to transition, you got to put in time. And I love whatever it is you want to be, you got to call it out for yourself. I called that I wanted to be a commissioner, right? You called that you wanted to be an AD or a doctor. And so call that out and invest in that. And Kiki, you are the most innovative. I mean, we're all trying to keep up with you. You got a resolution and a solution for everything. You can't pay your bills. Let me show you how to do it right here. So thank you for always being an innovator and sharing that. That's the other thing. I think good leaders aren't afraid to share to help other leaders, and you all do that. So thank you so much, Dr. Barnes, Dr. Caldwell, Dr. Cable. You guys keep doing the great work you're doing. Your presidents are blessed to have you, your commissioner and Chico, your consulting agency. They are blessed to have you to find great talent out here. And we are in the pipeline. There are several of us who are ready and a lot of us who are not, but want to be ready. And so let's keep doing the work. And so thank you so much. And Dr. Felton, I'm going to hand it back to you. So thank you for the opportunity and allowing me to moderate tonight.
No problem, Madam Commissioner. There are 12 presidents in the CIAA that I know, having been at Livingstone College for 9 years, that are blessed to have you and will fight a lion with a switch and one hand behind their back for you and the work that you do. I know that sincerely. And I know that Jason, knowing him personally and watching Kiki's work and hearing of Caldwell's work, that you all are of the same ilk. And I think as an administrator, when I look to reimagine the people around me, this is, I mean, quintessential. You've got to be able to get juice out of everybody on the team. There cannot be, there shall not be, and there can't be, slackers at the table, because the table is what prepares the meal, is where the meal is prepared for the family. And we want people to eat. We want people to be healthy. We want people to have sustenance, and you've got to have the best and the brightest. And I like the reoccurring theme about each of you being leaders and not being afraid to have challenging conversations and empowering people to lead. So we're at the foundation. We're immensely grateful that you all would take time out of your schedules to join us to talk about an area that we know. I haven't seen the data, but I can tell you, I think you're about right, Dr. Caldwell. It won't be long. H.E.L.F was one of the first to do it at Arkansas Baptist, but it won't be much longer. Yeah. And people also need to understand that you are special, and can't nobody, and that's bad grammar, but good communication, can't nobody tell you where you going. Nobody ain't been with you in your conversations with Jesus. So
amen.
If you are having, if you're on that hardwood floor now and you have aspirations of running all of that, keep doing that. I'm telling you, the circuitous path is still a path. It doesn't matter how you get there. And I think tonight, reimagining how we see ourselves, the new executive administrators illustrated that point and punctuated it. So we're really grateful for the commissioner, the commissioner / coach who's coming to Wiley. She's going to be one of the first people. We're going to be a guinea pig. I don't know if she's been doing it before, but she's coming to talk to my athletic department here in the very short future. The senior associate commissioner, Jason Cable, and the executive consultant extraordinary, Chico Caldwell. We're grateful. We thank you. We pray that God keeps you in the very palm of his hands, and know that you have a friend. The good news is for you that you are in the family of health. The bad news is that you're in the family of health. We'll be calling on you.
You got it.
Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless you all too. Happy
Take
holidays.
care. Thank you.
This concludes the panel on the new executive administrator, why athletic directors and coaches must reimagine their roles. Please stay tuned for the next panel, finding and retaining rock stars, why today's leaders must curate the next wave while leading now. It is our final panel for the evening. Today has been a full day. I've sat in this seat and listened to the intelligentsia of this space. And I have to tell you, the Black college space is in a wonderful, wonderful space to be. The leadership, the scholarship, the folks here are just amazing. So if you have time in the next 20, 30 minutes, take a break. The final one for the evening, I will be facilitating it. Dr. Roderick Smothers of Philander Smith, Dr. Hakeem Lucas of Virginia Union, and Dr. A. Zachary Faison Jr. of Edward Waters College will be here with us. So we're going to play a presentation again that gives you information on the foundation. And again, thank you for joining us, taking this journey today. We want to thank all of the panelists and our thought partners and our thought facilitators for being amazing. Thank you and have a great day.